All right, Brandy, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to have you share your experiences and really just give other players knowledge from what you've gone through, what you've accomplished. There's so much information out there, but I think being able to hear directly from someone who's done it and has done it your way, which has been a lot of hard work, can give people real answers, or players and coaches and parents real answers and things that actually work rather than, a shot in the dark or putting your future in somebody else's hands. Um, so why don't you go ahead and just give me a little bit of your background in terms of basketball and stuff like that.
Well, I started playing when I was 8. Started playing like in a little park and recs and down here in Rio Linda.
Mhm.
Um, Played there for 2 years, and then by the time I was in 4th grade, my dad started making his own leagues, and so I just played for my dad from the time I was 9, 10 years old all the way throughout high school,
Okay.
uh, and played pretty much year round. I went to Rio Linda High School, had a lot of success at Rio Linda, and from the time maybe I was in junior high, I wanted to play Division I basketball, but obviously, like, I'm very small, so a lot of people, told me maybe if I grow a little bit more, it's more of a realistic goal, but it never really got to me. So, at the end of my senior year, I still wanted to play Division I basketball, but it wasn't the opportunities for me to play at that level weren't there. And I had some offers from a couple D2 schools and a couple NAIAs, but it's not what I wanted. And then you came along. My senior year, I remember how we were playing at Yuba City,
Mhm.
and we had blown them out. And you came down and you started talking to me, and I pretty much had my mind set up on what JC I was going to go to before I had met you. And I don't know, it was just, you were just so like for your players and for each individual player's goals and what they wanted to do, and that really spoke to me because no other coach has really reached out to me in that way. And so then I was like, okay, maybe Sac City, maybe, so now Sac City was in the picture, but pretty much like I ended up deciding to go to Sac City. um, Again, I wanted to just do 1 year and then bounce, but obviously it didn't happen. It's just because the opportunities didn't come up. And honestly, coming out of high school and looking back now, I wasn't ready coming out of high school, and I wasn't ready after my first year of JC ball. So playing for you for 2 years definitely got me prepared for what was to come, whether that be like high Division II ball or if it was Division I, just whatever where I would have gone afterwards. I knew I would have been prepared for it. But playing at Sac City, it was fun. I pretty much just enjoyed playing for you. I think that was like the best part about it, at least in my eyes, and a lot of relationships that I built there that I'll pretty much carry on for the rest of my life. And I really look back on that experience as something that I needed to go through in order to be successful. And now obviously here playing at CSUN, I feel like I couldn't be more prepared for it. So I appreciate the journey, even though like it wasn't just a clear path. Like you said, it took a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication, even when people were telling me that, I couldn't do it, I was too small, or, just my goals were too high, my aspirations were too high. So, yeah, you actually helped me a lot during that time because, like I said, a lot of naysayers throughout, even like whether that be teammates, family members,
Right.
coaches along the way, like it was just coming from all over the place, and I could just look at you and you're just telling me like, just keep working, you'll be fine. And then you helped me all the way through, still do. So so yeah, that's pretty much it. And obviously, like, I ended up signing to CSUN last spring.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just last spring, and then obviously I redshirted, and so now I'm just looking forward to playing the next 2 years.
Excellent. Well, thank you. A couple things you mentioned, I just want to touch on. You said you're small. How tall are you and how much do you weigh?
I'm 5'5", and coming out of high school I weighed 110.
Okay,
I weigh 130.
excellent. So yeah, not super big for the Division I level, but obviously you learn to play at your size and be successful at your size. Um, Good. So talk about, you mentioned a lot of naysayers. Obviously, I mean, I've experienced that coming out of high school and junior college level as well. I had a same goal in mind. I wanted to play Division I basketball because I wanted to coach. Um, so what did people tell you about what level you should play at?
They pretty much just told me that I should play at like a D2 or a NAIA or something that where I knew I'd get playing time. And that was always the case with people like, why would you want to go to a D1 school when you can go to a D2 and get playing time? But my thing was is that every time somebody told me that, I was just like, who says I'm not going to get playing time at a Division I school? You
Right.
know? So that's pretty much what everybody would say, like along with like sometimes people wouldn't tell me like where I should play. It was just more or less like, are you sure Division I? Like, like you're only 5'5", you're really small. There's a lot of big girls that play at the Division I level, but it kind of was just like, okay, so
Right.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, it's easy to follow suit when people, especially people who maybe coaches or that you look up to, are telling you one thing. And it's tough to keep that goal in mind and keep going. Do you feel like that maybe have given you an edge or kind of a chip on your shoulder to keep
Uh,
going?
it definitely did. But I would say it gave me a chip on my shoulder up until I got here. I CSUN and obviously Division I level, and it was just because I had this little thing like I wanted to prove everybody wrong, you
Mhm.
know. But as I've gotten older and as I've like even like my experience at CSUN, I've realized that it was not necessarily more about proving people wrong, but proving myself right. Like I can do this and I want to do this for myself. And whether or not I was going to make it or whether or not like I didn't reach my goals or plans, I just knew that I could look myself in the mirror and say like I gave it everything that I had.
Well, that's a big change of mindset. And to be able to do that on your own, because we haven't had that conversation, that's very good. Good for you. So let's talk about, AAU basketball is so big. I know you played AAU basketball. And so what do you know now that you wish you would have known then to maybe help you through the confusion of the whole AAU circuit and this is who you should play for and yada, yada, yada.
What I wish I knew then that I didn't, that I actually didn't know was not AAU program is in it for the players. A lot of times you have AAU programs that are just more in it for like their own wins and their own reputation as coaches and all of that stuff. But like you'll have a really big AAU program, they have multiple teams, but they don't look at each individual player. They don't focus on like player development or anything. It's never really about players individually and their individual goals. It's just kind of like trying to win as many games as possible, and that's pretty much all that matters. And I'm not saying that all coaches are like that or all programs are like that.
Right.
I think people should be more picky about who they play for and not always just go for the big name AAU programs and really try to find the coaches that are in it for the girls or for the boys that are really care about basketball and not just in it for the wins and for the reputation.
Yeah, good. I agree. And then talk about the recruiting process. So coming out of your sophomore year at the JC level, I know obviously because I was around that things were a little slow in
Oh, yeah.
terms of offers. And what kept you to be able to keep that goal in mind and know that what you wanted was going to come your way?
It wasn't easy for sure. Especially because like I had a lot of attention from a lot of D2 schools, especially early on in the season and throughout the season. And even like the coaches at these schools were telling me like, don't pass up on this opportunity and like really trying to push me to commit before I even had like all of my cards laid out in front of me. And so it was really hard for me. And even just like the pressures from like even like family, like how like you can't pass up this kind of opportunity. It's full ride scholarship, free education, all that stuff. But at the end, like I knew what I really wanted. I knew what my end goal was. And so it was really hard fighting that mental battle, whether like, okay, should I commit, kind of like be done with this and not worry about it? Or, am I going to stick it out till the end and see if I can actually get something that I want? And there was a couple, actually, I think just one Division I school that reached out um, early in conference play, and they kind of just like faded away a little bit. So it's kind of like false hope. and
Mhm.
how to deal with that. There's a lot of like mental games and understanding that it is a business and it's hard when you have such a huge attachment to like the game that you play and like your goals, which obviously that I had.
Mhm.
I had like a few emotional roller coasters throughout the season, which led to a slump towards conference. But you know, for me, it was just more or less like just focusing on what I really wanted.
Mhm.
Like I said, just writing it out to the end. And also having the conversation myself, like just knowing that if I didn't get what I wanted, that you know it's okay. You know, as long as I, like I said, like I could look myself in the mirror and say that, you know, I worked my butt off. I played really hard. I did all that I could do, you know, and just because the end results didn't go my way, you know, that I could still live with that. But obviously, like I did write it out all the way until April.
Right.
That's when Flowers ended up contacting me, and then obviously I made the visit and pretty much committed like on my visit. So and that was a huge relief to me. Yeah, I even cried afterwards. I was so relieved and so happy.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was definitely an emotional roller coaster for me. But like I said, at the end of the day, like I did reach my goal, and my plans did go as I wanted them to. Not exactly, but you know, the end goal was what I wanted, and I'll be forever grateful for that.
Excellent. Now you mentioned a slump that occurred during the season, and um, so how do you overcome a slump?
Well, I would say first and foremost, like understand that it doesn't last forever.
Mhm.
You know, like every player goes through it, you know, and whether it be just like a slump that only lasts a couple days or a couple games, or ones that last a couple weeks, few weeks, you know.
Mhm.
And also like for me, there was a reason why I was having a slump, and for me it was because of all of the emotional roller coasters along with class. It was just a lot of like mental stress that I was dealing with, and I had to recognize what was causing my slump and what was causing me to not play to my full potential, and then attacking the problem and knowing that like the slump doesn't define me as a player. You know, like I said, like every player has bad games, has, you know, bad few games, you know, but for me it was just keep doing what I'm doing, keep playing hard at practice, keep going hard, keep going in the gym after practice, before practice, just keep doing what I'm doing. And an analogy that actually Coach Flowers brought up at one of our practices that I kind of just stuck with me. He described it as like pounding a rock, and you keep pounding a rock and you keep going and you keep going. And, you know, some days it might not crack and some days it might crack a lot, but eventually the rock does crack
Mhm.
and it falls through, you
Mhm.
know? So I think that's a great analogy to what I went through. Was I just had to keep going, I had to keep grinding, I had to keep fighting through, you know, what I was going through. And finally I just broke through, and then I was out of it. So yeah,
Right. So I'm going to speak on it a little bit, obviously, because I was around. And so it seemed to be at that time during that slump, you had this little fear of failure,
I did.
and so talk about just, that's a common thing. Every year that I've coached, even as a player, when you let that creep in and you let that set in, you become reserved. And that's what I noticed in your game is, yeah, you had that fear of failure. So that specifically causing the slump. So what did you do about that specific problem?
For me, like I said, I just had to I really had to have a conversation with myself and just look at it as like, am I going to reserve myself because I'm scared, and then like have the possibility of not getting what I want
Mhm.
because I'm not playing to my full potential. I'm not playing with the killer instinct that I normally do.
Mhm.
Or am I going to go all out and give myself the best opportunity that I can to get what I want, you know? And to me, there wasn't a gray area to me. Like I was either going to do it or I'm not. And that's kind of like the realization that I had was like, I'm not going to come in and BS and half my, you know, and that's another thing, like my teammates deserved more from me than what I was giving them in those few games. And it wasn't just the stats, and it wasn't anything like that, because even if you go back to a couple games, like it wasn't necessarily my stats, it was just my mentality and the
Right.
way I was coaching the game and the way I was playing. I wasn't, like I said, the killer instinct that I would normally have, or I should have. That's just the way I play, and that's who I am. It just wasn't showing.
Right.
And so like I said, like I just had to look myself in the mirror and just realize that like, one, this is what I want to do, and this is my goal, this is my plan. So if that's what I want, then I can't say that I'm about it and then not be about it, you
Right.
know. So I have to go at it, full speed ahead, and also do that not just for myself but for my teammates and for you, because they deserved a lot more than what I was giving.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I mean, that's, taking responsibility, confronting the problem, and not shying away from it, which is the only way. That gray area can become so comfortable for people. So good for you. So how did you balance school basketball and your personal life?
Um, it was not easy, and honestly, like, when people ask me this, I don't really balance a personal life. And it's funny to say because I prioritize, and to me, it's school and basketball, and it's really always been that way. And I've been with Isaiah for almost 4 years now, so obviously he was there through high school and JC.
Right.
But we have an agreement that, like, even though he is a priority in my life, he's not my main priority, and he knows that. And it's just the way it is, and that's how it was for him too when he played at Folsom.
Right.
When it was basketball, and then any extra time that we had that we would have together or we'd have with our family or anybody else. But like I said, like, if majority of the time, if we have extra time on our hands, it's like, well, let's just go to the gym together,
Right.
let's like hoop at City or at the high school or something. But for me, and even for him, it's just when things are that important to you, things don't come in the way of that. My dad talks about it even like in high school. Like, a lot of my friends would go out and they'd go to like go get food somewhere, or like they'd go to a boys basketball game like a couple hours away, and like they'd invite me and I'd be like, no, sorry, I have homework. No, sorry, I'm gonna go play basketball, And my dad used to make fun of me for it because he's like, oh, you have no life. But I mean, to me, like, basketball and school, like, that is my life up until like I won't be able to play anymore. To me, basketball is, it's not something that will be around forever, and even like people who play professionally in the WNBA, like, they can play for so long, but eventually it does go away, So for me, it's like you have to take advantage of the time that you have with the sport that you love before you no longer can play anymore. And that's kind of just the way I look at it. So basketball, school is pretty much my life. It's just
Yeah.
what I do.
I mean, speaking on that too, I mean, you had a graduated with a 4.0, you're valedictorian of your high school, and then you graduated City with a 4.0, and also receiving the Female Scholar-Athlete of the Year, not only for City College, but for the entire state of California at the community college level. I did the math today, and I think that's out of like 7,000 female athletes. So that's quite an accomplishment, I must say. And I think you stated it very well. I mean, believe me, there's a lot of life after you're done playing. Probably, I mean, obviously the large majority of your life is after you're done playing. And I used to tell I know you've heard it, but you have friends and you have homies,
Right.
right? And your friends are going to be the ones telling you or agreeing with that lifestyle. Yeah, you have goals, you have dreams, what's going to push you there. And your homies are going to be the ones that are, not that they're bad people,
Right.
I'm not saying that they're bad people. It's just that they have different goals. And so, they may have their priorities different. And so at your age, being able to differentiate between those things, because it's hard,
Yeah, for sure.
it's not easy, but
Yep.
excellent. Talk about your eating and sleeping habits. So, you're 5'5", 130. I mean, I know at your high school you played a lot of minutes. At the JC level, you played a lot of minutes. I'd say 35 on average. And there were times, excuse me, we were playing 3-4 games a week. So how were you able to? Well, how much did you sleep, and how are you able to consume enough food to? I mean, because you never got injured,
Right.
and I think a recovery has a large part to do with that.
Yeah, so back in high school, I honestly can say that I didn't sleep all that much, and I didn't have the best diet. And it's not necessarily because I didn't care about it. It was just because, like, for instance, in high school you have 6 classes,
Mhm.
then you have practice, and then you go home. And with many AP classes that I was taking, I wasn't going to sleep till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and then wake up the next day at 7 in the morning to go to school. And in high school, it never really affected me. My eating habits never affected me, and neither did my sleep. And I think that's just because, you're a kid. Nothing really affects the way you play. Kids just play. But the moment I started playing at City, it lasted for a little bit, but after a while, I realized that how important it actually is because, when you're a college athlete, you're no longer a kid anymore, and your body's no longer the same. And it's hard to, recognize that and accept it. But I mean, it is what it is. So for me, and taking advice from you and even the trainers in the training room, they would just say like how important sleep is. So I made sure to sleep at the least 8 hours and maybe up to 10 hours a night, and have my classes scheduled to where I could get to sleep early, and I could get enough sleep to where I'm not tired. Because I know like a lot of people, they're really sluggish and in the mornings or whatever if they don't get enough sleep. And then if you're really sluggish at practice, it's not fun,
Right. Right.
So sleep was very important to me. And like who doesn't like sleep anyways. But and then eating, with the how much you do in college compared to high school is very different. So like I remember being at City, not just practicing for 3 hours, but just being there doing something for 3 hours. Like there'd be practice and we have conditioning and then weights and then all of that. It does take a toll on your body that you don't necessarily have in high school. And I took your advice and was in the ice bath every day, icing my legs, rolling out and stretching and making sure that, if I made sure that if I did those things, then I can't put blame on anybody else. Like if I'm making the right choices to recover properly, then if I do get hurt, then I just know it's probably from, like rolling an ankle, stepping on someone's foot. It won't be because that I'm not recovering properly. And eating falls into that too. Like in high school, I would say like you probably like eat 3 times a day, but as much stuff we do in college, it's not uncommon to be eating 5, 6 times a day. And it's not because like, you're overeating or anything. It's just because you're hungry all the time. And as a college athlete, I don't think it's something that people should think like, oh, I can't eat that much. It's too much. It's just you need to fuel your body when it needs to be fueled. I mean, when you're hungry, your body is just telling you that it needs fuel.
Right.
And college basketball is just different. And for pretty much any college sport, I'm sure any other athletes can agree that you just eat more. I mean, your body more. So for me, as of like right now, like I still pretty much do the same stuff. Like I still work out and I still play basketball and stuff. And I eat pretty much 5 times a day. So in the morning, before workouts, right after workouts, I have like a lunch and like a in between lunch and dinner, and then a dinner, and then like a nighttime snack. Like I'm pretty much eating all day,
Right.
and obviously like I don't gain weight, and if any weight is gained, it's usually because you're working out and it's muscle. And
Right.
like you don't necessarily have to worry about gaining fat with how much activities that we do.
Right.
So for any like athlete that's going into playing college, like honestly, they shouldn't worry about how much they eat. They should probably eat as much as possible. So
Yeah, I would completely agree. I can't tell you how many players, throughout my tenure as a coach, and it's like, well, what'd you eat today? Well, I had cup of noodle, and we're going into a 3:30 practice, and my practices aren't typically walkthroughs, so very important, very important, even just for sanity and emotional stability. It's a long season. A school can add a lot of stressors. It's an emotional time at 18, 19, 20 years old. So I think being able to also, you add that emotional stability, it just helps one be more successful.
Right. Yeah.
Excellent. So you came in obviously with big goals, and I'm talking about coming into Sac City. That was kind of the agreement. Hey, I'm going to provide you with an environment. I'm not going to guarantee you anything, but I'm going to give you the environment, the tools, and what you do with it is up to you. But having played Division I basketball and moved other players on, I obviously felt like you had the skill set and the character for it. So how are you able to entrust your goals into a coach?
For me, obviously starting with you, like before you, a lot of the coaches were just more or less like, not false advertisement, but it was just kind of just more or less like, it was like all fluff,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of just about like winning. They didn't really ask me about like my goals or anything like that. It was just more or less, how can I help them win, and as much as I like winning, and I hate losing even more, because it is important to me. Coming out of high school, what was really important to me was moving on after, because JC is only 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And for most people that go to JC, I would say if they do want to play, like that's their main goal, is to continue playing afterwards, because I guess JC is only 2 years.
Right.
So for me, like meeting you, it was just pretty obvious that like you brought up to me, like, and you just asked me a lot of questions about like my goals and what I wanted, what level what level did I want to play at. And it just kind of just made it very clear to me that you were very, it was like players were first to you. Like, what did your players need? What did your players, like, what were their goals? How could you help us to achieve those goals? And like I said, as much as, I mean, you like winning, we all like winning. At the end of the day, like, if we can't develop as players, and if we can't develop even just as people, then I don't think coaches are really doing their job. And to me, even like my teammates, I think that was the best thing that we could honestly ever have gone through playing for you. And like I said, not just basketball wise, but developing our character and developing our just being women in society, and just growing in that matter. Like all of that, those things matter, it's like, it's more than basketball.
Right.
And so when you recruited me, and it was very obvious to me that you were more about your players than it was about like winning, or like I said before, like reputation. It was just very obvious to me, like, this is who I wanted to play for.
Yes. Excellent. Well, I appreciate that. So you were a great leader. Not as vocal as I'd like you to have been early, but you got there. But what did you do? Well, how are you able to lead your team?
Well, first, that I think is the most important part is leading by example. For me, coaches and teammates never have to question my work ethic or how hard I'm working. Like, I may not have the best practice. I might not be knocking down on my shots. I may be turning the ball over here and there, but nobody could ever question how hard I'm working. Like, nobody in the gym will ever work harder than me, because that's just the way that's just my mentality. That's the way I approach practice. And it's just setting a standard. And for me, that was really important, that if I'm doing it, then everybody needs to do it. Everybody can do it. Everybody needs to do it. So that was the first thing. What I wish I would have done my freshman year, like, or just earlier on, was just, like you said, being more vocal.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like I hadn't earned my stripes to start just directing people to do certain things. Even though, like, I did lead by example,
Mm-hmm.
it was just, I didn't feel like I had earned that yet. And even if you told me a million times that, like, to speak up and, like, correct people and hold people accountable, I just didn't do it. Like, I was just not scared. It was just, I just didn't feel like it was my right to do that. And I look back now, I should have just listened to you, and I should have just, I think we would have been in a different position as a team if I would have just stepped out a little out of my comfort zone and would have just done it. And like, going into my sophomore year, it was different. And what I also learned my sophomore year was relationships on the team are very important, and I've even learned that at CSUN, and something that Flowers continue to teach now is that, especially like the teams that I've played on, like, I look back, my most successful team that I've played on was one in high school. When I look like, okay, why were we so successful? And it was because we were all so close. Like, everybody cared about one another. Everybody cared, not just basketball, but off the court. Like, we'd all hang out at lunch. We'd all do things together, making sure we're all good, And so when it came to basketball, when people were holding each other accountable, it was never personal. It was just because they knew that, that we did care about each other and we did love each other, that getting on each other meant, like, pretty much, like, it meant a lot, but it wasn't to the point where it was going to hurt our feelings, because we knew at the end of the day that they cared about us.
Right.
At City, I definitely lacked that my freshman year. Like, I think everybody was pretty, like, cool with one another, but there wasn't any, like, deep connections. It wasn't until our sophomore year, when a lot of the girls came back, so we were all in it for another year together, that I did feel more comfortable speaking out and holding people accountable. And maybe it wasn't just always at practice, but definitely like in the team room, talking to people, reaching out to people, noticing that they may have had an off day, like their mood was a little bit different, just asking them like, are you okay? Like, just not even about basketball, just about life, and developing those relationships. And like I said, to let your teammates know that you care about them and you love them, not just basketball and not just winning and not about all the superficial stuff that maybe in 10, 20 years won't really matter, but the relationship that you build do.
Right.
So like I said, I wish I would have done that sooner my freshman year, but like I said, sophomore year, it was different. I feel like I was a better leader, and I'm still going through that at CSUN. I kind of like redid my freshman year at City, like feeling like I have to earn my stripes all over again. But basically just what I've learned about leadership is just first, like I said, first and foremost, like being the example, leading by example. And then when you do work hard every day and you do set the standard, well, then now you have to hold people to that standard, and being vocal about it if they're not doing it. Because then if you don't say anything, then nothing ever changes.
Right.
People are, it's up to everybody on the team. So that's pretty much what I've learned, what I've pretty much developed as a leader and as a person. And I'm looking forward to actually continuing to build that and use that at CSUN.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think as leaders, as coaches, it can get lost in the stats of it all. It can be about wins, and we can it all has to do with relationships. And if you genuinely care about somebody, that comes across. And if you are covert about it, that comes across, and so I know it's something as a coach it was very important to me that, and I did just care. And I felt like I was able to get a lot out of players because of that. And so I think you are on the right track as a leader is you have to care about people, so
Right.
excellent. What advice would you give to a high school freshman with the same goals and dreams that you have?
Just don't give up. Like, it does not matter what anybody else has to say, as long as you can look yourself in the mirror and be proud of what you do, and not proud of like your stats or proud of like, anything like that, but just proud of who you are as a person and how you go about things. And like, working hard just doesn't go towards basketball. Working hard goes towards school, and, being a good sister, being a good brother, being a good aunt or uncle, any of those things, like working hard to be a really good person.
Right.
So, and being a freshman, it's really hard to understand those concepts because you are very young. But as long as you continue to push for what you want and to work hard, things tend to go your way. Maybe not exactly the way you planned it, but things will fall into place.
Right.
And another thing that I would say is just don't take high school basketball for granted, because you blink and you're graduating and it's gone. And as a freshman, you think like graduating is so far away, and you have time, and you don't.
Right.
You don't have time. And I think that's the one thing that's like people do take for granted. It's like, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll work out tomorrow, And what people don't understand is that, well, you don't get now back, like once this day is gone, you don't get it back. You can't just reverse time like, oh, well, I should have done this, I should have done that. Like, no, just do it.
Right.
You have to give up hanging out with a friend here and there or whatever. Like, make what is important to you known to yourself. Maybe even tell somebody about it, because obviously if you tell somebody what you do, well, now you have somebody that holds you accountable for it.
Right.
Once it's vocalized, and once it's known, well, now you have yourself to hold you accountable, maybe another person that you trust hold you accountable, and then just fight for it. Just go hard every day. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Right. And it's interesting you bring up the point is you never get now back. It's something that I've really looked at the last few months, with everything that's been happening with COVID, with this racial injustice that's happening, is that you once an action occurs, you can never take it back.
Right.
right? And the effects that it can create are so large, and the detriment it can have to somebody, like you can't take words back. You can never take back the way you made somebody feel. You can apologize for it and you can fix it, but it's like action, and it's something that you can never take back. And it's really opened my eyes into, like, you know, what I say, what I do, things of that nature, is because you don't get it back. I mean, um, so yeah, that's an interesting point. What would you do differently?
Mm. What would I do differently? I think, I mean, I was in the gym as much as possible, but honestly, I'd probably just say be in the gym even more.
Okay.
um, I just wish I had more knowledge back then than what I do now. But obviously, like growing up, like you only have so much knowledge about like AAU world, about coaches, about certain things. But I wish they would have told me like how I realize now about time. Like obviously kids aren't always as dedicated as what I mean. I might make myself seem like I was in the gym 24/7, but you know, obviously like in high school I wasn't. But I wish somebody would have told me that like what I just said, just you don't get this time back. So every time you push something off, just know that it was kind of like a waste of a day that you could have put in work but you didn't. And I think if somebody would have told me that, I would have even been studying even more, probably even playing basketball even more, doing things that mattered more than what I was doing. And like, obviously it is important as a kid to like have a life and have a social life and have friends and do all these things. But like you said earlier, like there is a whole lot of life to live, you know, and a lot of kids don't see it that way. A lot of kids don't see the big picture.
Right.
And luckily I did for the most part at a young age, but I know most kids don't. They look at now like, well, what's more fun to do now? And for me, if I would have had somebody just tell me that like you don't get this time back, you need to value it, you need to use it in the best way possible. I think that I would have maybe been even more successful maybe than I was, but I think I would have just even been more focused. And that's pretty much about the only thing that I think I would change about it, just somebody telling me about it.
Yeah. And you spoke about, you know, you wish you had more knowledge. Was that the knowledge that you were specifically referring to?
Knowledge just about like I said, like AAU coaches, knowledge about even like the recruiting process, how it works, how it goes. Um, just anything like that. I was pretty oblivious and I was pretty stubborn when it came to a lot of that. And another thing, like people didn't really like tell me, you know, like I played for a pretty big AAU program, and honestly, I didn't really get much out of it, unfortunately. And if I would have had somebody to let me know that, so it's kind of wasn't a waste of time, you know, then things may have been differently.
Yeah. Understood. Um, Best moment as a player thus far?
I have a few. Uh, I would say like one from each level. So like high school, I would say the best moment was winning a section title my junior year. Um, it was just winning a championship is untouchable. Like at first it was winning a conference title, which that felt great, but then winning a section title with girls that I've played basketball with since I was in 4th, 5th grade, you know, just something that we've worked for forever. Like, you know, we look at like all these banners in different high school gyms and like it's all you've ever wanted, and finally we reached something like that, and to share it with people that you really care about was probably the best moment that I probably had in especially in high school basketball, and honestly probably overall. JC wise, I would say my sophomore year, it was kind of like the ball started to roll. It was during the Sequoias tournament, even though we didn't win the tournament, but we started to really gel as a team and really come and connect with one another. And then I'm not sure if it was our first conference game after that. Maybe it was at Sierra.
I think it was.
Yeah, and we played at Sierra and we beat Sierra, and that was another moment that was probably untouchable. Like the feeling to do that was amazing. And even though like it was just our first game of conference and like it didn't really necessarily mean anything in the grand scheme of things, but it just meant so much to all of us to do that.
Sure.
And then after JC, I think definitely signing to CSUN, the day that I signed to CSUN, that it was just like a surreal moment that I've been waiting for like forever. And it was finally here, and it finally happened. I can say that I made it. I finally did it. And like I said, I even cried the day that I did, like in the car on my way back to Sac from LA. It was just an amazing, surreal moment for me.
Yeah, understood. Excellent. Biggest difference from all three levels?
IQ and physicality.
And physicality?
Physicality, yeah. In high school, like I said, I've been the same height forever, but I was also very skinny. I
thought was layups.
Yeah. I mean, it was very simple for me in high school. It was just, I was pretty much always the fast person on the court. Make one move, go by, layup. I mean, that's just
hand on the rim. Yep.
But when I got to JC, and like in high school, I did start developing a mid-range game, but it wasn't like my go-to thing. It was just get by somebody, make a layup. And even threes, like I was a decent to average three-point shooter, but I wasn't a good three-point shooter. It's just I never had to rely on other things besides my quickness and my speed.
Right.
So going to and another thing in high school, it's so ugly to watch now because it's so unorganized and kids are just running everywhere, like running into each other and stuff. And as in high school, if you have one or two good players, most of the time that team wins.
Right.
And JC, it's not like that. And I think too many people underestimate junior college basketball. I think a lot of people think that it's just like another version of high school basketball, and it's not. It's very different. You have to be able to have a higher IQ to play junior college, because at the end of the day, like college basketball is college basketball. You know, you have to have a higher IQ. You have to have a better understanding of basketball in itself. And for me, I did have a pretty decent IQ, and obviously I feel like that's because my dad was my coach. It's like obviously I'm getting coached at practice during games, and I'm getting coached when I come home, and he's forcing me to watch film and stuff. So like I saw a lot of other things that maybe my teammates didn't. So it gave me a little bit of edge going into playing college basketball. So I did know a lot about the game, but not nearly as much as I thought I did. And playing for you, and just for instance, like ball screens. Like ball screens are so much more specific and in depth than what people make it out to be in high school. You know, understanding reads and what to do. And there's certain things that you do and don't do depending on what the defense does. And you don't do what you want to do. You do what the defender tells you to do, you know? And like I said, in high school, it's not like that. I mean, kind of just kind of like go with the flow kind of play. You don't really make reads. You kind of just go. Where college, it's very different. You have to understand what's going on. You have to understand not even just the defenders, but what are your teammates doing? You know, you can't cut at the same time that your teammate is cutting to the basket. Even if you're being overplayed on one side, if your teammate already cuts the basket, well, you can't clog it up now, you know? Just certain things like that are obviously like very different. And JC ball is no different from like even like playing at CSUN. Everything that I have learned playing for you at Sac City is similar, if not the same exact thing that I learned at CSUN, you know? And also like I said, so physicality, like obviously with my height, layups are probably the one shot that I won't get that much of, like how I did in high school. Layups were the only thing that I did, where in college, like I'd get to the rim maybe at most 3 times a game, you know, but all my other shots and all my other points are pretty much like in the key, around the key area, like my mid-range shot. And I had to adapt to that. I had to learn how to be successful in other ways that I wasn't used to. And even though I did start developing that in high school, it wasn't something that I relied on because I didn't have to. But in college, you have to rely on other things, because if you don't, then you just never adapt. You never become successful at higher levels because you're so stuck in what you think you should do and what you can do. Like, so like I said, and so like obviously like development skills, like all of that is very different than high school. You can't just rely on athleticism and speed. You have to be able to play smart. You have to be able to have good footwork, all the little things that play, even being able to pass with your right hand and being able to pass with your left hand. Just simple concepts and simple skills that a lot of girls and coaches actually overlook in high school that become very important at the college level. Everything's very technical.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, like I think JC basketball gets overlooked so much and is underestimated to the point where it's almost like it's almost equivalent to high school, and it's really not.
Right.
And I have a sister who's going to play college basketball, and I tell her all the time, like, just don't expect it to be like high school. It's
Right.
harder. You know, you have to become smarter. You have to get stronger. You have to be able to play with a little bit more contact and be a little bit more physical and all these things. Because like I said, it's not like high school.
Right.
So
Right. So you mentioned IQ being one of the biggest separating factors, and I would completely agree, and physicality. So what were the things that you did, or what were the things that you were given that helped you to increase your basketball IQ?
well, playing for you and even playing for like Flowers, it was a lot of breakdowns. So like a lot of like drills that incorporated like having a passer and then having two people set down screens and making reads. Do I curl? Do I pop? Do I backdoor because she's overplaying? All of those things, and really breaking it down into drills first before you just throw a bunch of girls out there and just tell them to play and then getting mad when they don't make the right read, you know? So I would say like obviously like breaking it down and then adding to that, I would say as a player, it's really important to ask questions. Like I think a lot of the times players just do as they're told, but sometimes they don't know why. And for coaches to be able to explain why in certain situations, and you do this when the defender does that, and really understand the why you're doing it and why you're making those reads. And, you know, like I said, asking a bunch of questions, it really allows players to really just not just do what they're told, but understand basketball.
Right.
And that's what I did. Like anytime that I felt confused or I didn't understand something, like I'd ask you a question, like, well, why do I do that? Or why would I do that? Kind of thing. So like advice to players would obviously just ask questions. Like I don't think there's such thing as a stupid question. Like obviously unless the coach already answered the question and then you're just asking it again, you know. But if it's a question out of confusion or the coach didn't go over it, like just ask.
Right.
Like there's no shame in that of not understanding. Everybody's learning.
Right. And I think we as coaches, I mean, you know, sometimes we'll get offensive to those questions, and we cannot, you know, or like, you know, how dare you ask that, or why would you ask that, or belittle a player for asking that. You know, we have to be able and willing to just present the information over and over and over again until they make it their own and they can understand it. So that's great advice, and I would agree. Did you waste 2 years playing at a JUCO?
No, definitely not. Like I said before, like looking back at high school, as much as I wanted to play Division I basketball, I did not have the physique to play. Like I was very, very small, not small like height wise, but just very skinny. I was not strong. My IQ was not as high as I thought it was. My overall just awareness just wasn't where it needed to be. Like I said, like back in high school, I thought I was ready, but after playing 2 years at JC, I realized that I wasn't, but now I am. You know, I think JC ball is a great stepping stone for people who may not have reached the goals that they wanted to and still strive to reach those goals, whatever they may be, whether it is only to play at D2 or to just to get a scholarship or just whatever that goal may be. I think it's a great stepping stone, but also as long as you play for a coach that is willing to put their players first, you know. So my experience was one that I obviously don't regret. Like I loved my experience playing at Sac City. I loved playing with the teammates that I had, playing for you and everything. So yeah, definitely not something that I would ever regret doing.
Excellent.
I would do it.
Good. Yeah, I think that's great advice. How do you respond to criticism or a coach yelling at you during a game?
Well, I definitely think criticism and yelling are two different things. Sometimes a coach can be critiquing while yelling, but for me, it's a little bit different because I enjoyed being criticized, especially if it came to like technical stuff and skill wise, only because like I was so hungry to get better. So if there's anything that I was doing wrong, or even if it was just a small step where I was an inch off of something, like I wanted to know. That way, like I can improve and get better. But when it comes to yelling, like I was yelled at by my dad since I was 8, so yelling never really bothered me. I think you were the only coach that actually never really yelled at me. um,
Uh-huh.
but I also think it's important for players and coaches to understand that not everybody responds to yelling the same.
Right.
So like for me, just because it doesn't affect the way I play doesn't mean that it won't affect somebody else.
Right.
I've known a few players, not just players on my team, but just girls that I've played with my sisters, that they play their best when you sit them down and talk to them and explain it to them instead of yelling.
Right.
Like not all girls or not all boys respond the same. And I think it's one of your main jobs as a coach or as a leader on the team to understand how to get the best out of your teammates, how to get the best out of your players. And if yelling isn't working, well, then maybe you have to take a different approach to that. But also as a player, if you're one that doesn't necessarily take it the best way, I would try to remind yourself that most of the time coaches are yelling or critiquing you because they care to make you better.
Right.
I know, like, for instance, my dad has a very short fuse when he coaches. But I know him enough to know that he yells because he knows the potential that his players have.
Right.
Where like he may get frustrated because they know that they can be better.
Right.
Also, as players, just understanding that the majority of the time your coach does have you in their best interest.
Right.
So sometimes yelling, even though it may make you feel uncomfortable or make you like just not want to respond, knowing that majority of the time it's because that they do care about you, and it's because that they do want you to succeed and continue to get better.
Right. Great advice. I had a player who played for me. She ended up at San Jose State, Sharice Thomas. Also one of the best leaders that I've coached. And she was vocal, and she used to tell her teammates, it's not how I say it. Listen to what I'm saying. I think people can, it's like in the heat of the moment,
Right.
it's going to come out how it's going to come out. But I think, like you said earlier, if you have that established relationship with your teammates or your players, it's going to be able to be consumed and taken in the correct way.
Right.
So, yeah. All right, good. What practice habits or mindset do you have that allows you to be one of the hardest working players on the floor?
I would say just having a mindset that like for me, it's just no one's going to outwork me.
Okay.
That's just the way I go about it. I mean, you may be bigger than me, stronger than me, maybe even more skilled, more talented, and you could probably play one-on-one and maybe whoop me 10-0, but those 10 points will be difficult for you to score. You know what I mean? It's just, for me, like, I'm not going to just go out there and not perform my best or not try to perform my best,
Right.
So every day, like before practice at CSUN, before City, before even, practice at Rio Linda, it was just like, no, I just told myself, just no one's going to outwork me. I don't care if I'm on the losing team today. I don't care if I don't have the best practice or my shot's not falling. I am going to play every possession like it's my last, and that's just what it's going to be. I'm going to make it very difficult for the person I'm playing against, even though, like, it's just practice. It's just how I go about it. Because
Right.
I know at the end of the day, like, if I'm working as hard as I can, I'm only going to make myself better, and I'm only going to make my teammates better.
Right.
Because when you get in a game, there's no team that's just going to come out and, take it easy.
Right.
I mean, it never happens. It will never happen, So for me, like, it's a responsibility to bring that energy to my team. Like I said, not to just make myself better, but to make everybody better. And I honestly couldn't live with myself just not working hard. Like,
Right.
to give myself a chance,
Right.
So that's how I go about it.
Right. And then I think when you said playing each possession like it's the last possession, I think that's kind of the epitome of playing present.
Mm-hmm.
And this being the only possession that one may have. And I think being able to play present is an absolute separator between good and great.
Oh, yeah. And I had to learn that even, like, playing for you. And you've known me long enough, so especially when, like, my first year, you kind of just realized that I was probably the worst person to, like, get on myself,
Right. Right.
There was nothing that a coach or teammate that could say that I haven't already said to myself.
Right.
So for me, it was learning that, mistakes do happen.
Right.
There's no such thing as a perfect game.
Right.
And, like, whatever had happened this past possession, I can't do anything about it now.
Right.
I have to keep playing, and I have to keep going, and I have to keep playing the game at the best ability that I can, and not worry about what I did 2 seconds ago. Just worry about what I'm doing now.
Right. Yeah, you can be your worst coach, you know. I'm talking not you specifically, but you know, everybody is an individual. And your job is to play, and the coach's job is to coach. But that's hard. It's hard to get to, you know, because you want to show that you care as a player. And you know, I used to tell players like, look, if I thought you were going to come out here and intentionally turn it over or miss a shot, I probably wouldn't play you. So, you know, it's like, get over that factor.
Right.
I get it. Okay, good. We just got a couple more here. How are you able to handle your relationship with your parents through all of this?
It was definitely hard. Not so much my mom, because my mom, you know, she'd never played basketball. She's just always like just there, just support. Didn't matter what I did, didn't matter how good I played, how bad I played. It was just always like, I love you, I support you.
Right.
No matter what you do, I'm here for you. My dad, on the other hand, and he knows this, we've even had conversations recently about it, was that he always wanted what was best for me. And I know that, but sometimes, you know, other people don't know what's best for you. You know what's best for you. And it was hard to, like, our relationship is very, like, we're very close. We've always been close. At the moment he started coaching me, it was just me and dad everywhere. He's going to a basketball game, I'm going with him. He's going to go get pizza, I'm going with him. You know, that's just me and my dad. And in high school, he had a hard time dealing with the fact that I was going to JC, because I did have a couple offers, and he wanted me, you know, he sees it as, you know, free education, free, you know, the opportunity to play, to continue playing, you know, and he was really pushing me to commit to a couple places my senior year, but I just told him, like, that's not what I wanted. And like I said, he had a hard time with me wanting to go JC. And even my sophomore year, I had different offers from multiple different D2 schools that were actually just not just Division II, but high Division II schools that were very competitive and very good. And like I told him, I just said, it's not what I wanted, you know. And he had a hard time with that, because he knew that if he was in my shoes, he would have just taken the offer. But like, I've had to remind him over and over again, like, it's not about you, it's about what I want. And as you may disagree with me, it's like I said, it's not about you, it's about what I want. And like I said, me and my dad have talked about it, like, recently, and he admits that the reason why he pushed me so hard to commit somewhere was because he didn't want me to, you know, like, fail.
Right.
He didn't want me to, you know, be heartbroken if I didn't get what I wanted. And so, like, obviously, as a daughter, you just kind of like look at it as like, he just wanted the best for me.
Right.
You know, he didn't want me to be hurt in the end. He didn't want me to, you know, be upset. He just wanted to protect me. But, you know, like, my sophomore year, I was 19, 20 years old. You know, like, eventually you kind of just have to allow your kids to just make the decisions for themselves. And, you know, if they, you know, like, for me, it was, if I did get hurt in the end, you know, I wasn't going to be physically hurt. You know, I would have eventually gotten over it and I would have been fine. But I knew, like, any parent, you know, they want to protect their kids as much as possible, whether that be like physical, mental, emotional pain or anything like that. Like, they want to protect you from it.
Right.
But I think it's made our relationship a lot stronger. Like, I mean, he's probably the biggest supporter now, which is funny, because, like, he said, like, he wasn't sure if it was going to happen, but now that it has happened, he's very happy for me. And now he's just looking forward to me playing and him watching. Like, I know I redshirted this past season, which obviously none of us planned for, because I did get injured. He had already bought tickets, like plane tickets, to come watch us play UCLA and USC, and like, he had already planned it, like, throughout the summer to come watch you play. So yeah, the relationship was a little shaky. Actually, I shouldn't say shaky, because our relationship is very strong. It was just more or less we weren't seeing eye to eye for a couple years, and it's never made me question his love for me as a dad or anything like that. But it's just, like I said, I think it's made it stronger, and also I think he's realized that you know, his kid's a lot stronger than what he thinks.
Right. Excellent. All right. So last question, well, a couple more questions. What skills are the most valuable that have helped you to where you've gotten?
I'd say the first one is just mental skills.
Okay.
I think, and people say it all the time, that once you reach a certain level, that sports become 10-20% physical and 80-90% mental. And I think it's 100% correct. I mean, basketball turns into kind of like a job, and sometimes, it's not always fun. You don't always like waking up super early. You don't always like going in and putting in extra hours and extra work because you're tired, or you feel like you have other things to do, or even in practice when you're super tired, but like you have to continue pushing for your teammates, continue pushing, or even like we're doing suicides or someone's not making it and you have to keep running until somebody makes it. It's just like you continuing having to push through those even little adversities. You have to have mental toughness to be able to do those things, and constantly being your number one supporter in your own mind, just reminding yourself like you can do this, just one more rep, one more up and back, one more this, one more that, like I said, just having the mental skills to understand that, being able to put the emotions aside and just do it,
Right.
is obviously like for me, like, like I'm not going to sit here and say that I love practicing every day and I love waking up early, it's just not realistic. But to me, like my purpose and my why I do those things, like in my end goal, is so important to me that it makes those decisions easier, having that in the back of your mind and like constantly telling yourself that you can do this, I can do this, like just keep going, keep pushing, taking it day by day. So I would say mental skills are probably the most important thing to have, because if you can't, keep yourself present mentally, the skills will never necessarily matter.
Right.
Be the best player in the world, but if you get in your own head about certain things, then you always reach like a ceiling, like you'll never be able to surpass it. But basketball skills, for me, I would definitely say developing a mid-range game is probably the thing that I go to most of the time. I remember my first few practices at CSUN, it was practically a layup to me. Like I didn't even look to go all the way to the basket. It was just mid-range pull-ups left and right. This is what I do now. And not to say that like I don't make layups or that I don't shoot threes. It's just that when you're a smaller guard, you have to be able to find those little pockets that there is a shooting opportunity for you to score. But a lot of people like don't see it. Like my little sister, she's going through that right now. We talk about it. She's developing a mid-range game right now. And she says that, well, I don't know when to pull up. Like I don't see it. I don't, and it's a very important skill to have as a smaller guard, to notice when you can pull up and where to pull up and how to do it. I would say that's probably the one main skill that I've benefited from and that I still continue to benefit from. And a skill that gives you the ability to just adapt. Not everything is set in stone. Being able to be flexible, not just with like basketball, but teammates and certain things that are thrown at you. You have to be able to adjust sometimes on the fly. When you're playing teams, you have to be able to call out certain things that may, weren't according to plan. Being able to be, like I said, be flexible, being able to adapt. A lot of things that are kind of just like I said, just more mental. Right. So I think that's probably pretty much outside of like physical, like my mid-range game. I'd say those are the most important skills to have.
Nice. Excellent. So you've accomplished your goal, your past goal, full ride to Division I level. So what's next in terms of your goals? And then how are you able to, once you've achieved this goal, continue to put new goals forward? I think a lot of players or a lot of people, they'll reach a state and then they forget or don't know that, hey, I got to put something else ahead of me to continue to reach towards.
Right. So for me, I know a lot of people don't, because even I have a lot of teammates on my team that don't play basketball to play professionally, but for me, it is that is the case for me. Like I do want to continue playing after college basketball. So my goal is after this is to play overseas, if not honestly WNBA. Like the WNBA would be like perfect situation, but obviously I need stepping stones, and obviously like my skill development does not stop from the time that I received a scholarship. You know, it's important for me to continue working and to continue working on skills and other parts of my game that are really important, because obviously, like, I'm not at that caliber yet.
Right.
Is it not ever going to be? But I do need to put in the time and effort to get there. And I do remember after I had signed a CSUN, I kind of just felt like this relief. Like, I finally did it, and I was kind of not lazy, but just kind of got in this like relaxed state. And then I kind of had to snap myself out of it and just be like, remind myself that, okay, just because I'm here now, I have to remember what it took for me to get here, and not just keep going with that same, you know, intensity, but even increase it.
Right.
You know. And so, like I said, like, obviously with my ultimate goal being able to play overseas or playing professionally or anything of that matter, like, it's really important to me. And obviously that's after college. But for me, that's most important to me right now, even though that's my ultimate goal, is to just be successful where I'm at now, you know, because I haven't even played a single game at CSUN yet, you know. So for me, it's mainly focusing on playing at CSUN, you know, like, especially how competitive it is, not just at Division I schools, but wherever you go, like, playing time, you know, it's competitive. You have to work every day to make sure that you get just touch the floor.
Right.
You know? So for me, that's pretty much my goal, or my personal goal right now, is to obviously work all summer and to increase my skill, or to better my skills, to be better than what I was last year, because obviously I did get injured. So I had a few months where I honestly was hardly doing any basketball. I have to get back to not only what I was, but also be better than what I was. And that takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of hard work to do that. And I'm in the process of doing that now. So like I said, like, the goal that I have just right now is to just get back to CSUN and just play. Like, that is what I want to do now. But like I said, my ultimate goal is to play professionally, and just remind myself that that is my end goal. That's what I really want. And to remind myself of that every day, and just continue to work towards that.
Yeah, excellent. It'll be fun to watch you go achieve that.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, last question. So you've given some great knowledge, some great advice. Any last pieces of advice or knowledge that someone, you know, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior in high school, freshman in college, whatever, junior college level, you would give in order for them to just go accomplish their goals?
Yeah, just going back to what I said earlier, like, honestly, just to emphasize it, just like, if this is something that you really want, just go for it, and just go full steam ahead, and don't allow anybody to tell you different. Like, if that's what you want, then nobody should have the right to tell you that you're wrong. You know, like, it's your life, it's your decisions, it's what you want to do. And there's always going to be people that have their own opinions and have their own advice to give to people, to change it, or to feel like they should, you know, lower their standards or lower their goals. But at the end of the day, if that's what you want, then just go for it. Just don't let anybody get in the way of your vision, because it's yours.
Right.
So that's what
Yeah, so having your own personal integrity on your goals and keeping your own counsel as to they're your goals, it's your life. So that's great advice. Well, I appreciate it very much. You know, again, you gave some incredible information and experience that are going to help a lot of up and coming players or people who are just trying to achieve their goals. I appreciate it. I'm very proud of you. I'm excited to watch you play next year. And yeah.
All right. Thanks, Coach. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.